Welcome to the Fully Mindful podcast. I'm your host, Melissa. I designed this podcast for you. I'm so happy you're here. We are talking about what it means to live with more intention, creativity, and authenticity so we can make aligned connections. I'm a neurodivergent lawyer turned coach who found the healing power of breathwork and the powerful impact of mindfulness as we navigate this wild and beautiful ride of life. Here at the Fully Mindful, we dive deep with inspiring guests, share solo mini-sodes that are packed with tools you can apply immediately, and I mix it up a bit with tangents and sidebars, where my friend and host of the New World Normal podcast, Debbie Harrell, joins us for some down-to-earth, sometimes random, but always meaningful conversations. If you're ready to breathe, reflect, and grow, you're in the right place. Let's get fully mindful. Well, hello, everybody. This is Melissa with the Fully Mindful. I'm excited to have Ellen Sutherland here today. She's a recently retired social worker who has been in recovery for 37 years. Her lived experience with ADHD and addiction has helped her to be a more compassionate and understanding when working in schools with colleagues, children, and their families who also have struggled with similar issues. She's close to her extended family and is a guardian for her older sister who lives independently and has ADHD as well as autism. She is now happily retired, spending her time traveling the world with and without her husband, who isn't yet retired, getting to see her children and wonderful grandsons as often as possible, and keeping healthy, playing pickleball and doing yoga. She continues to be involved in 12-step and sponsors numerous women, which is so exciting. I'm excited to have you here, Ellen. Thank you.
Hi, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so 37 years is nothing to sneeze at. Now, I know we talk about in 12-step about doing this one day at a time, but yeah, still 37 years, one day at a time. Quite, I don't know what the word accomplishment is, maybe not the right word, but it's something to celebrate, really.
Yeah, I feel very grateful that I haven't had to relapse on drugs or alcohol during that time. I feel like I emotionally relapsed during sobriety. There were periods where I didn't go to meetings as much as I should, and as a result had some struggles that were harder, I think, because for me, staying close to Alcoholics Anonymous has made my life easier. It's not as hard because when I don't have that, then I don't have a community and I don't have a reminder of how I can not have to solve it all,
Right.
all the time. So a lot of the tools that I've learned there have reminded me that I can let go. And it will be okay.
And it will.
Yes, it does. It has, despite myself and despite my efforts to try to control everything.
Maybe a good place to start, kind of what we do in 12-step, is maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it was like for you before you landed in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and started your recovery journey.
So for me, like this podcast suggests, I have ADHD and I come from a family of 5 siblings, all of us within 15 months of each other. The father who was a physician who worked all the time. So my mom was pretty much on her own without a lot of family supports. I also had a sister with disability of autism that was unclear. My generation, I'm 64 and so she was born in 58 and they really didn't understand her higher functioning autism. So there was that pressure as well. And she also has ADHD and we were all very high energy, running all around and falling and breaking things. I think I had 8 head injuries as a child or something, just chasing after my brother. My parents were also extremely bright individuals. My dad went to Harvard. My mom went to Holyoke. They were just very bright people and very intellectuals. And so I was very distracted and always thought I was one of the stupid ones in the family because I couldn't focus and couldn't sit still to remember and read all the things. And so I think that affected my self-esteem, which then, of course, helps, feed into when you find drugs and alcohol. It's like, everything's fine now. Look how great I am. I'm so beautiful. I'm so smart. And I found that to work for a little bit for me.
Did you find it early on? Was
High school, high
Mhm.
school. So my family also, served wine with dinner, but it was like French wines, when I was
Fancy.
younger. Yes, so it was considered kind of fancy. So I didn't really get drunk, I think, until I went to my first high school party the summer after freshman year in high school, I think. And it was like, whoa, I'm so confident. I was a late developer physically too. So I also felt different in that way. But I remember even growing up, I would say to my family, I'm not the oldest, I'm not the youngest, I don't have a disability, I'm not the only boy, I'm nothing. Because I was the fourth out of five children. And I was like, that's how I defined myself early on. And then when I drank and used, I felt confident and smart. And I found cocaine, and that helped me feel more focused and
Sure.
surprisingly. And I think that's very common too with people with ADHD. Methamphetamines and cocaine is common use. Anyway, so it really worked for me for a while
Mhm.
socially. And then, I finished college and graduate school and started a career, but I was still using at times I shouldn't have been using,
Mhm.
on the job, not getting enough sleep, going out after work with people and doing things that were against my value system,
Right.
and so there was this real cognitive dissonance. Like I was helping kids that were going into court and having them, recite the 12 steps. So I knew about AA and everything because I was a social worker. And then I'd go on the weekends and I'd just start partying. It was just Friday night to Sunday. And then it moved from Thursday to Monday. So my weekends started getting longer and really
Right.
started realizing that, other people weren't necessarily doing what I was doing. Even though I was in my 20s, I was always the last one at the party. I'm an extreme extrovert too. My ADHD has a lot of hyperactivity with it.
Mhm.
And so I, made a lot of friends all the time. And today I say still, everyone's my friend until they're not. So whereas I have other friends that like nobody's my friend until they prove it. Like I have friends who are very different in their outlook. Anyway, so yeah, it just seemed like, people would stop drinking at a certain time or would not order two drinks at a time because they were, you know, not worried about the waitress not getting there in time before. And I'd always order the drinks with the most alcohol in it and,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And then drugs got involved and kind of sped up my addiction.
It's so interesting, and I know that you and I are both in AA. We're both steeped in 12 step, and we're used to hearing stories like ours where, I mean, they seem normal, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what I think a lot of people who may be unfamiliar with the ins and outs of alcoholism and addiction is that it can happen to anyone. I mean, here you were raised by Harvard educated people, intellectuals serving fancy French wine, and probably, raising you as best they could anyway, and probably very well. And yet,
Yes. Yes. I had the same house my whole life. I
yeah,
had two parents. I went to the same school. I had a good education. I was fed and
right.
had
And you were
all.
able to do all of these things and have this stable, otherwise stable life. And
Mhm,
yet
mhm,
internally, you,
mhm.
uh, I'm hearing different and apart from, you said you described yourself as quote unquote nothing. And I mean, that's
Yes.
devastating, right? If we hear
Yes.
other people talk about themselves that way. And so you had all this external support, and yet it
Mhm.
still happened,
I
right?
wasn't good enough. Yep. Hmm.
You still had this narrative, internal narrative, and that probably fueled your addiction and alcoholism. And here's the other part that I think people don't often hear. And I think this is a really key, important part. And Gabor Mate talks about this too. This was a solution. Alcohol and drugs were your solution. Like they
Yeah.
actually relieved something, like they did good,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. And I felt, I had a group of people that would party, so I was popular,
Yeah.
so I felt like I belonged. It took away I had a lot of anxiety. I remember having even, it's so funny to think about it today, it's so long ago, but having real bad stomach issues and like just anxiety. My anxiety really caused my stomach to tighten, and I think I got an ulcer even in college, and drugs and alcohol just kind of took the edge off my anxiety.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know.
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know until I didn't get diagnosed till later when I got in recovery. And my therapist, and I really wanted to get to therapy. I was in group therapy at one point, and I really wanted to do well. And I kept being late for group therapy, and I kept blurting and over talking. And even though I really didn't want to do any of these things, it was kind of like my addiction. It was like, I don't
Yeah.
want to keep using, but it just kept happening. It
Right. The
just
words keep
felt
falling out of the mouth and
yes. And I kept interrupting people that I knew I wasn't supposed to be interrupting, and I wasn't supposed to be late, but it was still happening. And I was supposed to keep a clean kitchen, and I was supposed to be on time. And yet I always seemed to be a half hour late to everything. And
despite having recovery, it sounds like
and
at that
despite
point.
working so hard in recovery and having a support system and having a therapist. And finally my therapist said, you might go look and get evaluated. And that was the best thing that ever happened. And I went and got an evaluation. I remember one thing, they did this IQ test, and came back and they said I had a fairly high IQ. And I thought they had done the test wrong. I didn't believe it. I was like, that's not true. That can't be. Because if that was the case, I would have performed way better than I did in school and college. And I would have been a better student than I was. And so it just helped confirm, though, the ADHD, that how the distractibility and the impulsivity and the poor time management and all of that really impacts your ability to perform at the level that you have an ability really for. And so how to sort that out and develop accommodations. And for me, I chose to take some medication that I am very lucky that has been successful for me and allowed me that pause.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I definitely want to go back to what happened and how you got into recovery. But just on that pause moment, I
Mhm.
can really relate to that as a fellow ADHDer. So one of the things that they talk about in recovery, it's in the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, as they call it, is pausing when agitated or doubtful. And I remember for like 19 years, I felt like such a fraud because I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I have no idea what pausing before agitated or doubtful. Like I
Mhm.
would hear people talk about it and how they would do it. And I sounded like a really great idea, but very much like what you described about therapy and like, why am I interrupting people? And why I couldn't ever find the pause. And that's despite at the time I had 19 years of recovery. I had meditation, a well-developed meditation. I had all these things, but I
Mhm.
hadn't yet dealt with the ADHD. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until I did that that I found the pause. And I
Yes.
remember it just like it was yesterday. I remember like, holy shit, this is what they've been talking about. This is amazing.
Choice in my reactivity. I can make
Yes,
a choice in what I do next. That's what that pause is
exactly.
all about. And I connect, for me, it's the higher power,
Mm,
which is for me is the better part of myself that knows what to do. So now my values and my thoughts are more in line with my actions today, and
right?
that's what that pause is. It allows you to connect to that part of you that is very good, you
Yes.
know, and
Yeah.
is valuable that I believe everybody has. Just there's a lot of things that happen in life that cover that up or prevent you from having access to the best part of yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I love how the big book describes it in one of the appendices, and it says tapped and unsuspected inner resource. And that's
Yes, I love that. I love that. Do I have that up here? I have all of these. Maybe I should show you.
show
Let's see if
us.
I can get my camera. So all these little
Oh
post-its,
yeah, all the
all
posts.
these little AA things. Oh, here it is. Look. Unsuspected inner resources
Yeah,
right here
perfect.
that
Oh,
we refer to as a higher power. And then
yeah.
I have to let go of control. So fear doesn't make the decisions. Self-reflection, prayer, meditation alone beneficial, but used together is where the miracles happen. So
Yes.
all these little things. This is why I say the program for me, I mean, doing it by myself, you know, it's like holding on. It's like
Yeah.
they call white knuckling, you know, it's like, it's so hard. I tried doing that with, again, talking about my ADHD. I've tried doing it without having AA, and I've tried doing it without having medication. And I remember thinking, well, I'm so far along in my recovery. I have all these supports. I know myself so much better. I don't need to be on meds anymore because my
Mhm.
ADHD isn't that bad, whatever that means. And so I've tried a couple times to go off my medication. And I remember the last time it's like I went off. And yes, if I work super hard, I can focus and I can not interrupt as much. And I can be aware of, you know, those ADHD symptoms and behaviors that cause difficulties for myself and my relationships. But it's so hard. And my anxiety gets worse because I'm always afraid I won't be able to do it. It's like, why do I have to make it so hard for myself? Why? It's
Right. I mean, we didn't get sober for it to be a struggle, right?
no,
And,
no.
and it doesn't have to be. And there is a component, I think, to ADHD as well as to addiction that is sort of self-defeating, right? We'll say, oh, but maybe I deserve, like there's a part of us that says, well, maybe I deserve it to be hard, right? And that couldn't be further from the truth, but that's there, right?
There are all these supports out there and people and programs today to make it easier for me. And I take advantage of it.
Right. I mean, it's sort of analogous to if somebody had diabetes where they needed insulin support and we're like,
Yes.
you could do this without insulin. It would be really, really hard for you.
Yes. And you might die
And you
earlier.
might die.
But
But why exactly when you could have the support that
you,
would make it more accessible to you? Well, I want to get back to your story. We
my
got
recovery story.
part of, yeah, your recovery story, what it was like, but what happened? What happened
What
to,
got me to treatment?
yeah.
Yes, I was a social worker. I was going into court having these teenagers get to treatment and say the 12 steps and then going and using drugs and alcohol. And I think the drugs, for me, it was cocaine, was illegal and it was expensive and the crash was so dramatic. The addiction was so quick that it surprised me. I realized I was using when I didn't want to. It'd be late at night, everyone would be going home, and I would want more.
Mm.
So a friend of mine had gone to this place to get a drug and alcohol evaluation, and she said they just told her to go to AA and see if it fit for her. So I decided to go get an assessment to see what they'd say about me, knowing that they didn't just refer her to treatment there, because I, of course, was distrusting and sure that everybody just wanted you to use their treatment centers or whatever. So I went and I sort of told half of what was true, but enough, I thought, that they could get the picture, you
Right.
know. And I remember her leaving and coming back and saying, leaving the room and coming back and saying, I just found out we do have a bed available for inpatient residential treatment, like highest level of care for me. And I was like, what? Did she not hear what I just said? I am a social worker. I have a full-time job. I come from a good family. Like, why would she recommend that? Like, I'm not that bad. But I was such a people pleaser and so insecure. I was like, oh, okay, well, my insurance is changing. I'll come back in November when my insurance changed. And she's like, okay. And I'm sure she was like, sure you will, which she was right. It was like November came and I had another excuse, which was you can't get sober before the holidays, even though tons of people's sobriety dates are around the holidays. But I was
That
like,
makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
nobody can get sober during the holidays. That's too hard. So I'll wait till after the holidays. And then the holidays came and went. And then there isn't really a lot of holidays between Christmas. There's not that I could justify. And that had been my rationalization. And that woman had said enough that it kind of broke down my denial. I really didn't think I was that bad. And so anyway, I did. There was one more weekend where I said I wasn't going to use, and then I did. And I felt so horrible. And, I stayed up all night and the birds start chirping and you feel bad and you can't sleep and I've got to go to work. It's awful feeling.
Yeah.
And I decided to do it, but only outpatient. I wasn't going to go to inpatient. I'll do outpatient. So the outpatient was in Gresham. I worked in Hillsborough. So every day after work, I would drive from Hillsborough to Gresham to get to my treatment center.
Yeah,
Okay, and I would do that. And I did that. And then I got pregnant in aftercare with my first child. And I think that really helped me because I still didn't think I was an alcoholic. I just had a little bit of a cocaine problem. And that just needed to get under control. And I needed to stop that. And getting pregnant and having a child really helped, I think, me stay sober because my life dramatically changed. You know, it had different purpose. And I still wasn't going to AA regularly. And I did have a women's group in Lake Oswego every Monday night that my husband supported me going, though, as it turned out, he was alcoholic too. Later, that is a whole nother story. But I sort of went to that meeting. And then when I quit nursing, it got bad again. And I remember my husband saying, if this is recovery, you need to drink. And I got so mad. Like, how dare he suggest I drink? Like, because I was dry. I was so terrible. I was just yelling and I was a kind of a mess. And so I
they
started.
weren't really working the steps.
Wasn't working the steps at all. Didn't have a sponsor. Wasn't doing the program well at all. And I was so ashamed, so ashamed. And I didn't want anyone to know. So I went to this closed women's meeting, which I thought meant nobody could come and see me or know. It would be a secret, you know. And I purposely went to treatment in Gresham and worked in Hillsborough and lived in Southwest Portland so nobody would know, you know. I just wanted it to be a secret. And then I just started going to meetings more often.
Yeah.
And I started be willing, you know, because I'd see these other women that looked like they were getting happier and I wasn't feeling better. I just wasn't it was really an internal thing for me. I just felt horrible about myself. And my solution had been drugs and alcohol, and that had been taken away from me.
Right.
And felt horrible again, a lot. And I had this new baby, and I didn't want to be a bad mom and a bad wife and a bad worker. And so I started working these women started looking happier that had been there the same amount of time and started making friends with these people. And I said, I guess maybe I'll try. I'll try to do what they say.
Right.
I still didn't believe in a higher power or God. I was an atheist at the time I entered, but I said, I'll hang out. I'll make AA my higher power for now when I do these steps they talk about. In my second year, I got a sponsor and started working a program. And I started, just like they say, feeling better.
We have so much in common, you know.
I was just a fighter.
When I first got sober, I mean, I went to meetings. I didn't tell my husband for like months. And he asked me what I was doing, and I was going to coffee, which was true, in a way, if you pay fast and loose with the truth. I didn't get a sponsor, but I used a friend's sponsor unbeknownst to either of them.
I love that.
So I would meet Katrina in the parking lot, and I'd say, Katrina, what's your sponsor having you do? What are you doing around step one? And she would tell me, and I'd be like, okay, now I like, go do that. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. And I guess in a way it worked, but it certainly worked a lot better when I did exactly what you said, which was to like, okay, I'm actually gonna be honest about what I'm doing here. And I'm gonna actually get my very own sponsor and actually do the thing and see what happens. You know, I didn't have a lot of faith. Sounds like you didn't either. Like, I'll try. I got nothing else to do. I'll try. See what happens. Not a whole lot of faith that it was going to work for me. It sounds like you had a very similar experience.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey everybody, this is Melissa with The Fully Mindful. Have you been curious about the power of the breath? Join me for in-person or online breathwork sessions in the new year. We have themes such as awaken, reset and manifest, love and kindness, empower and energize, and more. We'll use conscious connected breathwork for truly transformational sessions with curated music and somatic coaching. Visit the website at thefullymindful.com for detailed information on upcoming sessions. Fulfill your need for personal development and breathe into the new year with purpose and intention. See you there.
Yeah, I didn't. I was like, okay, I'll do it. I do it. Well, just like I wanted to treat, it was like I tried to do things on my own. I'm really one of those people is that like I have to try it on my own, and not so much anymore, but it's still sometimes it's like it has to get bad before I'm willing to make another solution. Because I was just trained growing up with these intellectuals that I really was trained that if you're smart enough, you can figure anything out.
Mm-hmm.
And if things aren't getting figured out, it's because you're not smart. And so I didn't want to not be smart. So I had to just try. And I could never say I don't know or have any humility at all. And that once I was able to just say, I can't, it's not working. There must be another solution.
Yeah.
I am willing, but I didn't want to join this cult they called it AA, and I just didn't want to belong. And people that I thought were to compete with, that you had to be more popular than. And I was, I'm straight, so it was like trying to get the boys to like you more, than them. And it was just, I just was raised to believe that you had to be smart and better and really competitive. None of that has worked for me, to have that kind of mentality. And I've learned how to be more inclusive, how to belong, how to have humility and admit when I don't know. And the more I admit, the more I learn,
Yeah.
and the more I grow. And that is really all that I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. I really just to calm down and to be open and willing. I think that what is it on our coins is honesty, openness, and willingness.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest about and vulnerable about how I really do feel instead of pretend that I have it all together, and really get honest about what it is that makes me feel that way and what can I do about that and believe that, there is a higher power that wants things to be better for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
including myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
What do you think the turning point was for you when after you kind of conceded, okay, I'm going to try this? And
there really has been
better.
multiple. It's not like a point.
Right.
You talk about, some people have these like spiritual experiences. It's like for me, it's been sections of my life. I was talking just in a meeting. I just had a birthday and was shared my story, and I was saying how I'm kind of the first third was like building my addiction. The middle third of my life has been learning about it and getting to this now last third of my life, I think, where I kind of get it and figure out, what really is my issues. And there was just so many points because I ended up getting divorced, during recovery. 50, how many years was I? Geez, let's see, 87 to 2001 is, what is that? 13 years, 14, 15 years in recovery. I had a huge emotional, relapse, kind of right, trying to save my marriage and accommodate and not allow myself to be the person I was meant to be, and in order to stay in a relationship that was not working. That was a huge spiritual moment for me, because I remember saying, they say God or higher power won't give you more than you can handle, but that's just not true. Higher power does give you more than you can handle, so you will rely on a higher power. And I remember feeling for the first time in my life that I really can't handle this. This is out of control. I remember thinking for the first time, maybe if I drank, I could stay in this marriage, like maybe that would work for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying that to him. And again, this alcoholic man who's like still supported me being in recovery, he said, I'm not taking responsibility for that. You better go talk to your sponsor or whatever it is you need to do, because that's not my fault if you drink. And I was like, that's
Wait, that's not fair.
that's not fair. And that was like, I feel like that was a higher power saying to me, you know what, girl, you need to make some decisions here. And I did. And then being single in recovery with a single parent, with mom, and all the shame that came with that, and fears of financial insecurity, and then working steps around those issues, and then learning through dating all the things you learn dating in AA, out of AA. And then I ended up getting in a relationship with a man in recovery. And so then all my codependency stuff comes out. So there's been so many stages in my recovery that I've had to just kind of go deeper and work harder and learn more about the steps. And now the sponsoring of women, now that I'm retired and I have all this time. Plus, I was working in Title I schools and many families dealing with addiction issues, so I was constantly thinking about recovery, and women were talking to me about, their recovery and their struggles with it, whether I was sponsoring them or not, because I was a social worker. But then now it's like I'm doing more 12-step work, more working steps, more than ever with all these sponsees I now have of these amazing, amazing women, some with a lot of sobriety, some with newer sobriety, some who are struggling with relapse.
I mean, they say, right, that you can't keep it if you don't give it away, which is the like spiritual axiom.
It's so true for me. It's so true. And I've never felt happier and clearer about my recovery as I have in this stage of my life. I just am so grateful for, which I never would say. I hated AA. I thought it was a cult. I didn't thank God when I came. And it's like, now it's like, oh my God, why isn't everyone? It's too bad. I even have friends who said, I wish I was an alcoholic so I could have AA. Like, because you know what to do. You know how to, it's like this, as they say, a design for living. It's so much more than not drinking or using. It gives you so many tools and friendships
And this
to
community,
manage life on life's terms, right?
yeah, in this community where you can be open and honest and people generally don't judge you and you have,
Yes, it's so inclusive.
yeah,
Yes. And the depth of intimacy that I have with my relationships in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's so great. It's hard sometimes with, as we say, normies, people that aren't in the program, because you want more depth so quick. For me, I do, like with
yeah,
relationships. And I think a lot of people are like, why? I always ask the next question, that a lot of people don't. There's a lot of small talking, especially in middle and upper class white women, so I try to find people that are like less small talky,
yeah.
really want to get deeper and more intimate and more vulnerable.
Yeah, it can be sometimes challenging in a very different way to be in groups of people where that's not happening, right? Especially as a woman with ADHD, right? Because that ADHD component is heavily immersed in interest, right? We love things that are interesting and it's like physically painful when things aren't interesting to stay, right?
Yes. Yes. If I have to talk about like Costco lasagna or the weather or some new outfit,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw up in my mouth.
I mean, it's like it can be
No.
physically painful, right, to remain present and nice. And that doesn't mean that people with ADHD aren't interested in other people's interests or mean. It just means that if we're not specifically interested in something, it can be really challenging.
Unfortunately, my default is to push the envelope then, like bring up something that maybe makes people a little uncomfortable sometimes, or
Yeah,
the topic that might be, in those sort of, and also not to go into those kinds of social circles sometimes, but I have family where, and put in situations like that. So that's been a challenge for me, is how to be able to accommodate a culture, that maybe isn't as interesting to me,
right,
because that's the kind of compassionate thing to do, and not try to stir it up. I
right.
always try to stir things up a little bit. It's like, oh, here's Ellen. I remember this one woman, after I'd had some time, when I first came into AA, I didn't go to this area's meeting for a while. And I came back, and this one woman who had been there the whole time since I'd had some time, she came up to me later. She goes, oh my gosh, when I saw you walk in the meeting, I was like, oh my God, look who's here. And she goes, but you've changed. I was like, oh, okay, good.
Thanks for seeing me.
Okay, I'm not quite as wild.
So, how do you navigate? Well, and actually, I should back up. At what point in your sobriety did you discover you had ADHD? I know you told us the story about how it came about, but where were you in your recovery?
I'd been going, it was fairly early, I feel like. So I got in recovery in 87. I was 27. January 12th, 87 is when I got in. I was confused because my daughter was born December 87. So I was thinking, wait, it was before my daughter was born, but it was that same year.
Same here.
And I entered group therapy after aftercare. And I'd been in recovery for maybe 5 years or so, because AA just wasn't working enough. I was a new mom, I'd done the mom thing, but then, Lindsay got a little bit older. I had another baby, and I should know. I don't know exactly. But anyway, the
Fairly
first
early on.
5 years probably of my recovery and my ADHD symptoms were, it's always hard to tease out. Is it because you're newly in recovery or you have ADHD? So once you realize you've got a program of recovery, you're stable, you're clean and sober, but you're still having these blurty symptoms and can't regulate your emotions very well. And I can't manage my time still really
Mhm.
well. My therapist said, you should go get evaluated. So it's probably 5 years in.
Yeah. And so you've had some time then to navigate having both recovery from addiction and alcoholism and recovery within
ADHD.
ADHD. And
Yeah.
so, like, what has that been like navigating both of those at the same time?
Well, I had so much shame about both. And my family always, nobody told me to go get help.
Mm,
So it was a surprise for some people because I was really sneaky about my drug use.
mhm,
And probably the only person that thought maybe I had a problem was my husband, but he had a problem too. So he was supposed to go into treatment when I was to go to treatment, but he decided he didn't have a problem, that it was just me. And so he didn't go and I did. So it was like, that's probably the only person. I hadn't had a lot of consequences
mhm,
externally. It's really internally. So my family really kind of minimized and thought it was just, oh, what is she doing? What is she has a problem. And I remember they even though they came to family treatment, my father walked out on it thinking it was a bunch of hokey stuff. They're very
mhm.
traditional medical model,
Right.
they were very older school kind of intellectuals. It's like, first of all, you don't share your private business with groups of people who are not psychiatrists and that are undertrained. And they
Yeah.
didn't understand, addiction or alcoholism. My siblings were more supportive
Mhm,
and understood. But so I had just so much shame because,
mhm.
again, it was like I should have been able to figure this out, and
Right.
what am I doing? Is this really true? Do I really have? And I wasn't totally convinced I was an alcoholic. I just had this drug thing. And it's very clear now to me, just the way I drank was alcoholically from the beginning. And then the ADHD, same thing. Is this just another thing like that I'm trying to explain my bad behavior kind of thing? So it took me a while to get through the shame, but I will say the ADHD diagnosis also was like, phew, that explains it. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm not a bad person. There really is a name for this. And then I spent a lot of time learning about both. Right?
Mhm.
Addiction, what does that really mean? And as a social worker, I also was encountering people and learning in my own training about both. So I had that in my training. I had it in my work experience. I had it when I was going to AA. And so as I learned more and more, it totally made sense. I was like crazy reading all these self-help books about all ADHD, women and ADHD, how that presents versus men and what that looks like. It's like, that's me. That's why they called me whirling dervish, mouth, like all these names as a kid. It makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's
Head
really
injury.
interesting. A lot of what I've read will say things that, women often don't present with the H part as obvious as men and boys. And yet, I I relate to you. I had the very pronounced boyish H, the hyper.
I had the hyperactivity.
Right.
So in some ways, but I think because I was smart, I could also learn, like I still got good grades, and I had a stable home, same home, not a lot of chaos at home. There wasn't abuse or violence or addiction in my family. And so maybe that helped me too. So I did okay in school and went to, I
Yeah.
tested well and went to good colleges. And so it's like, how could that be if you have ADHD? And I think it's because, I could learn things within 1 to 3 times, and most things come past you 3 to 5 times in school, I found out. So it's like I could miss 3 of the times and still learn. Like,
To learn it. Well, and you have evidently a high IQ, which you didn't realize
well,
until I did
yeah,
the testing.
whatever
Right.
that means, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our strengths, and I think that's the takeaway too for ADD. I know I also suffered from a lot of shame, and in fact, I found it much easier to admit I I was an alcoholic and in recovery for alcoholism than I had admitting that I had ADHD. That somehow with ADHD, it was just a personal failure. Like I just, I understood that alcoholism is a disease and, and I got that. I mean, not always, but once I got that, I got it. But for ADHD, it was so much harder for me to see it, and maybe because I had been diagnosed my entire life and had learned how to mask it so that, and not ask for help and just figure it out and suffered greatly. So I always saw it as just a deficit. Like I should just be able to figure it out because I had figured it out up to that point. But what I didn't realize is what you and I spoke about earlier, which is that you don't have to suffer. And that's the thing, is that our culture, for better or for worse, expects people to think and behave in a certain way. And people with ADHD have very different ways of being. We're just wired differently. We have different nervous systems, and the way our brains work is just different. And yet we're expected to live in this very uniform society. And so just accepting that, okay, no, I'm wired differently. And that's actually not a bad thing. Like there are all sorts of really interesting things. Yes, they're harder. They can be harder to live in this very kind of linear, uniform way. But there's also stuff I wouldn't trade.
Oh my God, my ADHD now, I just feel, especially older, I have way more energy than most of my friends. I have a sense of humor. When problems come up, I'm not afraid of mistakes or things breaking or not working out or like unpredictability of life at all. I always feel like we'll figure it out. It'll work out somehow because I've had so much practice fixing things breaking or not working out or unpredictable things happening because of my ADHD that I'm not afraid at all. And there's so many adults that are so fearful. Well, what if this breaks? Or what if we don't get there on time? Or how many planes I've missed, how many appointments I've messed up. It's like,
and it's still worked out.
It still worked out and it's okay. And I'm really a master at figuring out all the 10 other things you can do to pivot and solve things, and that's a skill I developed because I had ADHD and unpredictability. Also, I'm not afraid of that. It's my spontaneity. People love. It's like some people love. There's other people that need routine. Sometimes that's hard. But some people love that. My sense of joy and my forgiveness, my inclusivity, my interest in neurodiversity. Because there's so many people that are hiding in the shadows and ashamed because of various.
You have this extra developed empathy as a result.
Empathy, compassion. And it's so, I remember when I retired, my colleagues said, what are we going to do when we get someone with ADHD or addiction issues? Who's going to help them? You just know without even thinking, it's like, it is your lived experience really can make a difference.
And you also support a family member who has autism as well.
Yes, which has been a big journey. Yeah, and ADHD. And she was incorrectly diagnosed. And again, there was this pushback of family and others who didn't understand what, her autism and ADHD was and just didn't know. And because of my experience, and I was able to say, nope, this is the road we're going. And she is flourishing. She's flourishing. And they're all looking at me like, you were right. You're right. It's like, thank you so much. And I've never seen her happier. My only regrets is that I didn't do something sooner. But
I mean, we learn what we learn when we learn it, right?
And I only had control. Again, I don't have all control, all power. And she had parents. It wasn't until my parents became older, and she was born in a time that it was different and people didn't have the information they have today.
Although evidently there are still some people in really high levels of government who still don't have the information, but that's another story.
And they don't get it, but that's all right. More and more people are being open and the terrible things about social media, but also social media has allowed people to find out more and get more information and be more visible.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. And I think also, I've definitely benefited from it, right? I have AA, so I have my community of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I'm very grateful for. I have a community of people involved in mindfulness and breath work as well.
Yes.
And I've had a harder time finding community, at least in-person community, with people who have ADHD, except when I get lucky and meet them like you.
In fact, we should talk after about, because I have many women that I sponsor and also others who have ADHD, and they're like, we should have some sort of group for ADHD and addiction women.
I love it. I see.
Coming. We may
see what happens
have time.
When two alcoholics who also happen to have ADHD get together. I think that's a great idea. But, social media has been really helpful because sometimes when I'm feeling pretty shitty about myself in particular, and I don't necessarily always recognize it as the ADHD component, but then I'll read something on social media and I go, oh, yes, that's it. That's exactly it right there. And then just like in AA, that identification piece is made and I don't feel alone.
Yes, I have do you do the Attitude newsletter?
Yes.
Have you seen that? So that just is constantly in my email feed. I don't read it all the time, but sometimes I'll see a headline and I'll click on it. And they're so good. They have these short little blurbs that may draw me in or not or whatever. And it's like, it may be an issue that I'm feeling or dealing with. And that's been so helpful for me too.
Yeah, there are really great people out there doing a lot of work, coaches and others who are out there. And I will, for anyone listening, I will drop some links in the show notes for resources for ADHD. And of course, I'll throw in Alcoholics Anonymous because that's just a given. It's not the only way to stay sober, but it has been a way that both of us have been able to maintain long-term sobriety, happy sobriety. With that and kind of getting close to the end, which I know you and I could literally talk
on and on and on.
Is there anything that you would want someone listening to know, whether they're, someone suffering from alcoholism, ADHD, or both, or they have a family member or a friend, anything that you would want them to know about your experience?
What would I want them to know? I think that there's so many people that are just like you. I really felt very alone. Times have changed. That's 37 years ago. People weren't as open. There wasn't social media. They weren't talking about it. We weren't posting on Facebook their AA coins or their years of sobriety or something. It's different today. You just don't have to make it harder on yourself. There's just so many communities that can support you. I think you're right about, if you think you have ADHD, finding that community or those resources is harder. But like I say, this ADHD newsletter that I really like, that was been really helpful. And, you probably can connect with more links about discovering about ADHD. But for me, AA is everywhere and it's free. And like I moved to this new house and there's a meeting 2 blocks down the street. It's like, and my neighbors across the street, I find out they and these other neighbors are nearby, like also are in recovery. It's like surprising once you are open and talk about it, how many people, everybody has somebody they know or related to or themselves that deal with drug and alcohol issues. You don't have to be ashamed. That's it. The shame prevented me from getting well, even though I quit drinking and using, to getting emotionally well for a long time.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And I appreciate that as the parting message here is like, you don't have to do it alone and you don't have to be ashamed. And there is hope for a really bright and full, joyful life.
I feel so lucky. I'm very, very grateful. I just can have real relationships and feel like I truly know who I am and who I am not, despite what other people might say. And that confidence and that sense of security of that just allows me to just be living a pretty awesome life today.
I love that. Thank you so much for being so open and honest about your experiences and your message of hope. I really appreciate it. And I know we're going to talk offline about our new meeting that evidently we're going to
start. I know. I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop here and can't wait to have you back on the show someday in the future and hear about all that you're doing.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the Fully Mindful podcast. If you got value from this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who loved this content too. Remember, small moments of mindfulness can lead to big changes in your day-to-day life. Until next time, take a deep breath, stay present, and tap into your own mindfulness. I'll see you next week.